that, and then he kind of translates it into modern English and makes it more accessible. So here's Auguste Comte, Introduction to Positive Philosophy. Comte began sociology, and he also began positive philosophy, and he is known as one of the first, not the first scientist, but one of the first people to lay down the foundations of what science should be doing for us. And positivism, you might have heard of. Positivism is basically the position in epistemology that knowledge is only what we can verify in the world. So that's kind of the first tenet of science of some scientists. Some scientists differ a little bit on that, of course, but that's kind of the very beginning of looking for a very empirical and testable and verifiable and knowledge being only that. So of course, what does that throw out? Well, that throws out most of religion. That throws out most of philosophy. And the other thing that Comte did was he had this kind of progression of knowledge or of inquiry, that everything kind of begins in a more or less mythical sense, kind of like the Greek gods. What do the rivers do? What does the weather do? Well, we have this God that controls it. And then it moves into a philosophy. So you might think of the Francis Bacon kind of approach to science, maybe, and the Aristotelian approach. And then it moves to a positivist. That's the third era, or the third movement. And then it becomes looking at empirical evidence and testable and all that kind of stuff. So that's something else that he contributed, I guess. But that was a long time ago. I think he was in the 1800s, and French philosopher. Here's Sam Harris, Free Will. You may know Sam Harris. He was a new, they call it the new atheist. I'm not really sure. I don't know who the old atheists were. But he was in the atheist movement with Christopher Hitchens and Dan Dennett and Richard Dawkins. And Sam Harris, he did a PhD in neuroscience, although from as far as I know, neuroscience, he's done nothing with neuroscience. His fame has come from all of his atheist stuff, so I don't really know what he's going to do with himself now. He does have a podcast, which is fairly good on iTunes, but he takes a determinist position in free will. This is actually a tiny little book. This isn't even 80 pages. This is just under 80 pages, so it's just his little take on free will. But he takes a determinist position. So, and I don't take that view. I don't think we're determined. So this will be interesting to go through and see what he has to say. And it's got the gilded. I'm not sure why they do that, but got the paper is cut. I think it's either, yeah, it must be the paper is cut with different lengths. I don't really know why they do that though. But I do have a few books that have that kind of paper cut on them. Now the rest of them are going to be on political philosophy. So here's Tibor Machan, Capitalism, Individualism, and basically says that these have to be connected. Individualism and capitalism and property rights and things like that. Whereas communism or socialism would be a collectivist society. We're all in this together. Whereas capitalism, individualism is about merit, what you can produce and what you can offer your neighbors, voluntary trade and things like that, as opposed to socialism, which enforces relationships. That's a very basic touch on those topics, but that's the basic case. So pretty much the reason Tibor Machan, he actually has written a lot of books, and the only reason I really know him is he is a libertarian, and he also has written a little bit on Ayn Rand, which was actually pretty good too. Here's another related one, Max Stirner, The Ego in His Own, the Case of the Individual Against Authority. I think the guy was a German or something, and it's translated, but it's supposed to be very good. So I picked that up. This actually was brand new. These ones were new. I bought off Amazon, but I think they were like $10 or something. Maybe this one might have been like 14. This one maybe $10 Canadian, of course. And here, the rest of them were used though, and all the other ones I think were used. Here's another one, a little tiny student edition. Can you imagine this being your textbook? You sign up for a course and there's your textbook. Little book like that. Actually, the textbook that I had for my course that I taught was just a little book too. I didn't have a giant $100 book. So this one's Problems of Political Philosophy and just a quick little tour. So I thought, well, that's perfect. These little books are nice to read. And so that'll be nice. Another, I do have already a copy of this, John Locke, but I thought it looks good. It looks nice. Nice little hardcover. Every Man's Library. I do have a few of these, but I certainly am not collecting 800 or whatever, how many there are. There's no way. But a nice little copy like this I will have. So 2 treatises of civil government, of course, John Locke being a pillar of Western political philosophy. There's no doubt about it. And he also has some educational views, John Locke, that you might be interested in. So, but if I don't consider myself a book collector as much as most people might think I am, but I don't collect books like someone would collect stamps just because they look nice. But I would make an exception for nice little copies like this. Every Man's Library makes these nice little copies. And last one, which I've been reading, and I am past halfway through, Herbert Spencer. I've been looking for Herbert Spencer for a long time, but I didn't want to pay full price online. But finally I found one in a used bookstore. The Man versus the State. This is his political philosophy work, with 6 essays on government, society, and freedom. So this is really good. I've got a few things flagged, and I've got all kinds of lines in here, and I will definitely make a video of this, which will give you, when I'm finished with the book, which will definitely give you a quick tour of Herbert Spencer and his thought. He actually has a lot of good arguments in here about what government should do, what it shouldn't do. Very commonsensical, very like, well, look at this situation, look how this operates between free people, and look how it operates in government. Why would we want this? And why would we want more of this, right? So he sort of argues a bit like that. So, but anyways, when I'm finished with this, I will definitely do a video just to kind of extract it from my brain and put it into a watchable and accessible form. Kind of reminds me of Harry Potter, the Dumbledore, when he would, some of the scenes when he would finish the day, he would take stuff out of his head with his wand and put it into the world. But that was a little bit different. That was his worries or something like that. He would extract his worries and put it into a cup or something, so he didn't have to worry about it, at least for now. Kind of like when people say you should leave your hat at the door, leave your worries at the door instead of bringing it home, that kind of thing. But what I'm suggesting is that I just extract what I've gotten out of these books, and I've got them in a video, and then I don't forget about them. So this has The Man versus the State is about 170 pages, which I finished that, and then there's a bunch of essays. So I'm working through his essays now. So I think I'm in over legislation. That's about 50 pages. So I'm working on that right now. And he's got a bunch of other ones in here too. There's what the book contains. There you go. So now I'll get to that when I finish, and it'll be interesting. Herbert Spencer was known as the most important British philosopher in the 19th century. Yeah. So yet he's rarely studied. He's usually thrown off as a social Darwinist, but I've heard from a libertarian thinker named George Smith, who wrote on Spencer, I guess, in some journals, and he also has a book, which I haven't got to yet, The System of Liberty. And he writes that Herbert Spencer was not a social Darwinist, and I got to the part where he talks about it, and he's not a social Darwinist. So that was something that I guess he's been smeared with, and a lot of academics still make that mistake. You got to be careful with these. I'm not so sure whether the review process for academic works has really been working out. I have a hunch that actually knowledge has been lost in the academic world. And a lot of people are writing on topics that actually have already been written on or have already been discussed and argued for. And they haven't read those things, and so they repeat it. But if we don't remember what we've done, as a race, as a species, then we are bound to repeat ourselves in the future when we've forgotten certain parts and believe that are new. And that's a problem. What do you do about that? So you can't really expect that academic works necessarily are new information. Sometimes the author and the reviewers of the book are in error, and they believe that what is being published is new or new ideas, and it isn't. So we have to be careful with that. But anyways, those are new books for philosophy, and next will be science.